Welcome to Chef Leadership Academy. I'm Professor Jagdish Sheth. This presentation is about marketing to low-income consumers. Actually, technically, it's more like serving the low-income consumers, but using marketing tactics. Low-income consumers has become focus of attention by world leaders. These are the extreme poor people who earn less than $2 per day income based upon United Nations definition. Therefore, their annual income is $700 to let's say $1,000 roughly. But the market size is very large. Problem with this segment is not as much that they earn less, and we do have the poverty elimination programs to reduce the number of people below the poverty level, but the real problem is that their consumption and expenditures are not as efficient. They don't get the benefit of what others get in terms of high quality products at lower prices. Most of the consumption is unbranded goods. Markets are exploited by the middlemen. You have oppressive lending rates, and therefore most of their use of their money, hard-earned money, or whatever money they get, cash they get, actually is not properly marketed. So marketing can be a good societal force, especially in this segment. So let's look at some of the numbers. Worldwide, the low-income consumer market is about $5 trillion and actually growing faster than the global economic growth because new population is growing exactly where the low-income consumers are. Largest concentration of low-income consumers are in sub-Sahara Africa and in South Asia. Almost 80% of the below the extreme poverty level consumers are in those two continents and subcontinents. Most low-income consumers generally are living in rural markets, and therefore market access or the last mile problem is very key. Just reaching them itself, there is no infrastructure, there are no logistics out there properly, and how do you crack that last mile problem? While there are low income consumers, we call urban poor, living in the cities, in slums, there also to some extent there's a market access problem, but not to the level of rural markets where most of the people below poverty level reside. Surprisingly, low-income consumers have more discretionary income than college-educated professionals because they pay no taxes, they have no rent, and they get subsidies from the government or from aid agencies all over the world. So their income may be low, but their discretionary income as a percentage of income is pretty high, non-intuitive. In short, there is a potential to target low-income consumers and make it more efficient. As I mentioned, low-income markets are inefficient, unorganized, and fragmented. There are too many middlemen involved. If you can design so that there is a one-step distribution from producer to the consumer or two-step distribution, you can professionalize, rationalize this market and actually offer them better products, branded products at a lower cost. And I'll give some case studies and examples to show it is already done by very good innovative marketing companies. Most products bought and consumed in low-income markets are unbranded or second-hand used products. My estimates are running that in the low-income consumer market, unbranded consumption of products is at least about 80%. Most of them actually make things at home even. But it is basically what one would call street foods. Vendors on the street make things at home, bring it to the market. This will be true for fruits and vegetables also. This will be true for meats or whatever they consume in consumer markets. And for durable products, let's say garments even, or appliances, and nowadays cell phones, there's a large used second-hand, as it is called, market. Cash is the dominant method of payment. They have no access to credit or credit cards, and therefore one can leapfrog the credit card system altogether, as many emerging economies have done. And that can rationalize and that can professionalize the whole transaction, which is very inefficient right now. And unfortunately, the debt market is very oppressive because you have these Shylocks, or you have these mafia-oriented lenders who are very demanding high interest rates. And by the way, surprisingly, some of the highest interest rates I've seen is in the disadvantaged consumers in Atlanta, the city where I live, where 100% interest rates are very common on any money they borrow. And there are mafia tactics to collect that money. So the debt market is so oppressive that many times a farmer or a low-income consumer commits suicide. If we can provide more professional marketing approach, marketing for serving the society right, marketing for the good of the society, I think low-income consumers can do better in their consumption by having more efficient, more quality-oriented, branded products at lower prices. Low-income markets are inefficient primarily because they are governed by socio-political institutions such as faith-based organizations or the mafia. If you go to any kind of slum territories, slum markets, they're thriving, but they're controlled by people who will not allow the traditional access. In many ways, this would be very similar to the gambling market, for example, or the drinking alcohol market, for example, etc., which may not be legalized. So many illegal markets are controlled by elements which are very similar elements who control the low-income markets. Low-income market is very large, $5 trillion economy. It has the size but does not have the scale. So the whole advantage would be marketing knows how to scale up things. And is it possible, therefore, to organize the low-income market worldwide, but concentrated in those two continents, as I mentioned, which is the perfect target to scale up and offer branded, packaged, quality products at lower prices? We need to learn how to compete against unbranded competition. So to me, it's a great opportunity to organize the low-income consumer markets through scale and productivity. How can we do it? So here are 10 separate strategies that can be deployed, and they have been deployed by some companies. The first and the most obvious strategy is to convert unbranded to branded consumption, branded products. In toothpaste, Colgate has done that thing. Even in the rural markets, tea companies have done it in quite a few places. Same Sub-Sahara, same South Asia rural markets or low-income markets. Soaps have done it recently. So given those examples that in consumer packaged goods or fast-moving consumer goods, it is already done. It can be done. Whatever consumer is making at home, one can commercialize it. Whatever the consumer is buying as a street food primarily, or a sort of a vendor, highly fragmented, could be scaled up and organized properly. Second one is to convert non-users to users. And the most dramatic example today is cell phones. The most illiterate people in the ruralmost populations, especially in South Asia, as it happened in China at one time, and definitely sub-Saharan Africa, and many other parts of the world where we do have the low-income consumer concentration, I think cell phones have done a wonderful job. It's true democratization of a very high-tech product, and it is very impactful, makes the life more convenient, whether you are a fisherman in a village, whether you are a farmer, for example, or whether you are basically a service professional or a service person. A merchant, doesn't make any difference. However, one can create markets for this thing for other products than cell phones, and that includes cosmetics. It is a proven fact that beautification is universal. We know even the tribal communities have beautification techniques of their own, symbolism, representation of beauty. It is all self-done or done in a very traditional way, fast forward and can be modernized by offering modern cosmetics to the ruralmost population. And if you believe this cannot be done, Avon Cosmetics has already done it. In Brazil, all the way into the remote parts of the Amazon jungle, and I'm told they have 1 million agents in Brazil alone as a new access strategy to provide cosmetics to the tribal people or low-income consumers. Modern medicine, another great example. Rather than having the traditional homemade herbal medicine, one can have herbal medicine but packaged in a more quality-oriented, branded medicine. Today, medicine is everywhere, it's possible. Whether it's oral analgesics like aspirin, or whether it's a stomach disorder tablets, or whether it's something else. I have seen this thing in many rural parts where I can go to a store and I can get a package of something which is branded. Very universal. We also think that another product that has done very well in emerging markets has been, especially in India, is life insurance policies. Now, people did not need life insurance. But in India, Life Insurance Corporation of India, which is a public sector state-owned enterprise, has done an extremely good job of innovating life insurance as a saving mechanism. These people now learn how to save money rather than month by month income comes and expenditure, especially inefficient, oppressive lending rates, etc., inefficient consumption or expenditure of that money. One can take a portion of that and create a saving mechanism, which is what they've done through life insurance policy. Number 3, develop used product market. Huge opportunity. And technology changing so rapidly, especially digital technology, we have far greater product obsolescence today than ever before as we move toward more and more digital economy. So cell phones again are the obvious ones where you have the whole feature phones. Eventually it will be smartphones, old generations. In rural markets, motorcycles are a livelihood mechanism. Used motorcycle is a large market. In many countries, automobiles are a very large market. Often they are transported across the borders legally or illegally, for example. My best example is many used cars have gone from America to Cuba, for example, or America to Mexico. And the most dramatic example I have seen was about 2 years ago when I went to Myanmar. And I saw most of the automobiles in Myanmar were used, mostly Toyota, Nissan, or Honda. And I was amazed how many cars were there not just in big cities like Yangon, but every place. And I found out that there's a large used market, as many countries do not keep the market longer than 3 4 years. Cars have a life more than that, and government to government or market to market, there is a market exchange that takes place where used automobiles from more affluent ASEAN countries like Singapore actually come to Myanmar as used market. So used market is very big. And of course, in the agriculture sectors, rural economy, tractors have been similar one, where you may have 3 or 4 ownership changes till the life of the tractor dies. Number 4, provide livelihood as merchant consumers, which says increase their income level, but tie the income level to consumption. Lots of examples where you make the consumers as your agents also, which means they aggregate the demand not only from themselves, but their whole neighbors and the friends or tribal community for that matter. And there are all kinds of interesting examples today because as many economies go from agriculture or rural to industrial, factory oriented, the land prices are skyrocketing. So the value is not in the income, but in the wealth. The land is now a real asset, just like in urban markets, it would be a home, a condominium, a flat, as they call it. I'm told that many farmers have become rich in India as the land is converted from agriculture to actually more and more institutional, commercial, or a business land. Similarly, it happened in America where the farmers in Orlando area in Florida were farming, doing the typical orange grows, making no money because oranges were also grown in Brazil and other places. And surprisingly, they found that they can sell their land to Disney World as it came out there, hundreds and thousands of acres of land, and became very rich. In India, I'm told in one particular district, there was a demand for 44 Mercedes Benz cars, which was a shock to the company and the local agent distributor for Mercedes Benz, I guess, in city of Pune. When this order came, they were in disbelief. All the people who bought the cars were rural farmers, semi-literate at best, very much traditional clothing, traditional behavior, but they all had become rich because they sold their land and their dream was to buy a Mercedes Benz, which is fascinating. So we have these contradictions in the marketplace that we need to understand and give up our stereotypes about rural low-income consumer markets by and large. So the income may be low, but they may have a real asset in terms of land, for example. So that's very key. Provide livelihood to increase their income as they consume. As I mentioned, A1 Cosmetics has done that in Brazil. Grameen Bank has done that in Bangladesh, for example. There are plenty of examples. Marketers have to be imaginative to make these examples utilized and adopted in their internal bureaucracy, internal assistance. Point number 5, repackage to make the product more affordable. How can we drop the unit price, especially for consumables? So again, lots of innovations have come from low-income markets, like a single-use sachet, which is now becoming very profitable business all over the world, not just in India, where it was invented or innovated at least. Many of the beverage companies have said, why do we have to have a big size drink? Can we make it into smaller packages? Those are fruit juices on the one hand, water bottles on the other hand, or Coca-Cola on the third hand, makes no difference. So single-use sachet drops the unit price and therefore makes it more affordable. Consumer, in this case low-income consumer, does not have to store. He buys, consumes, and that's it. Just like we eat in a restaurant, we go and eat the meal, but we don't store that milk. So it's very possible that one can create demand by repackaging. Financing the consumer and the consumption is equally important. You have a whole unorganized sector called the chit system in India, a lending system, or the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which all finances their livelihood. One can finance consumption, especially those which are high ticket items, durable goods, where you have to pay over time, it can be done. And of course, micro lending in Latin America is a very big business. And micro lending is the one that makes housing affordable to people by paying in very small increments of money, while the interest rates may be higher, but it is nothing like oppressive usury rates. Number 7, invent new ways to distribute the product. The traditional was like the Brook Bond tea in India. The traditional approach was the A1 cosmetics. But the new approach now, with the universality of cell phones, from feature phones to smartphones, with the 4G architecture all over the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, they are going from 3G to 4G to 5G maybe, just like they're doing in South Asia, Indian subcontinent. As you get more and more bandwidth and more video communication, high-speed network on mobile phones, I can today have a Flipkart in India, WeChat or Alibaba in China, Amazon, for example, anywhere in the world, can easily distribute the product and reach that last mile problem. This is usually transaction, but also can be linked with actually cash on payment, cash on delivery for COD as it is called, which used to be in America 50 years ago. But the postal system, which is universal, reaches everywhere in rural population, can easily become the delivery mechanism and collect cash, because most of the low income markets are still cash oriented as opposed to credit card or account oriented, bank account oriented. One can also organize bazaars and festivals, which happens in rural markets anyhow. But one can organize them. One can make them larger. One can make them more technology savvy. One can make them better packaging and branding, more promotion, increasing the awareness, make them bigger and bigger. If the same rural markets have religious festivals where millions of people come, one can create markets and bazaars of hundreds of thousands of people who will come just to buy things and then take it back. Point number 8. This market is looking for aspiration. They would like to have at least their child educated or have consumption which is better than what they do. So, how do we develop aspirational brands? In this segment, word of mouth and opinion leadership are very key. So one has to make sure that we have a strong word of mouth to create an aspirational brand. And also, best ambassadors for these markets are either faith-based priests or gurus or sadhus or whatever they are. Or on the other hand, and more likely, celebrities, sports celebrities, a soccer player, universal all over the world, in Africa, for example, or a cricket player in certain parts of Africa, for example, or any sports. Sports celebrities are universal, localized to each subculture when it's possible. So sub-Saharan market could have 2 or 3 great sports celebrities, as South Asia can have the same one, and that's 80% of your low-income market anyhow. So faith-based celebrities, gurus, or sports-based celebrities, and now of course movies and entertainment-based celebrities becomes very key in promoting the aspirational brands. Point number 9 is creating low cost, affordable innovations. Now, this is happening in a big way. Generic drugs drop the cost and the price by about 90% compared to branded pharmaceutical certified FDA approved products in Western countries. Generic drugs are growing enormously in the process. Actually, it's a reverse innovation where generic drugs are designed for the rural low-income population in South Africa or in Sub-Sahara as well as in South Asia, but they are now being used in the rest of the world, including advanced countries. Medical devices the same way. So when I hear these examples today, I suddenly realized this was the same what happened in the radio days 60, 70 years ago, where Sony invented transistor radio, so you don't have to have electricity. You don't have to plug in the radio, and it was portable, you could carry any place, and transistor radio was available anywhere in the rural market. So transistor radio all over again, as I call it. And by the way, to make it more affordable innovations, the country that has excelled in doing this stuff, surprisingly, is America. America actually invented low-cost, affordable cameras. Kodak was the company. When cameras were primarily designed for the professional market, they make it for the consumer mass market. America did the same thing with Timex watches. The Swiss watches were very expensive. They were heirloom in the family, will go from generation to generation like jewelry. Timex came out with a low-cost solution, and the rest is history. People in America began to have Timex when they're children, not at high school graduation or as a wedding gift. So Timex made universality of consumption. Model T did the same for the automobile. Henry Ford wanted to create a car, high quality, but that could be afforded by his factory workers, not just by the affluent rich families. So America has been a pioneer in creating low-cost, affordable products, and now emerging markets are learning how to do the same. The last strategy is very unique and different. I call it educate, 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 which has nothing to do with awareness increase, campaigns on the media that are appropriate for this segment, but it means that our measurements for financial performance must change. This must be mission-based measurements. Whoever is in charge of low-income markets cannot be measured in the traditional margins, quarterly performance, traditional growth rates. It's a very slow, long-term investment, and then you get a takeoff point. It just emerges suddenly. So it's nascent for a long time. You have to make major investment first before you see the outcome on the other side. So the traditional measures of financial performance on which a manager is held accountable should not be used here. So as I said, mission-driven measurements, it's like a missionary work. It takes years before the local population will convert to your brand, to your religion in some fashion. And therefore, industry-wide cooperative marketing may be quite often necessary. In other words, competitors get together actually to create the market where you share, like a cartels do, common logistics systems, for example, common distribution systems, common middlemen, however you come out to get the scale and share the cost of infrastructure, financial infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, distribution infrastructure, warehousing. I can go on and giving you all the examples. That to me is very key. So let me conclude this presentation. Worldwide market of extreme poverty, low-income consumers is at least $5 trillion and growing faster than the global GDP growth. Low-income consumer markets are unfortunately, however, unorganized, unbranded, local, and heterogeneous. Low-income consumer markets are also controlled by socio-political institutions, including religion and mafia. It is therefore a great opportunity to make low-income consumer markets more organized and efficient. If Walmart can do it in rural America, so can you in emerging markets. Remember, Walmart began with very small towns where world-class brands like Procter & Gamble brands were just not available. Consumers couldn't enjoy them. And Walmart and founder Sam Walton knew that if he can aggregate smaller demands from smaller towns with a good VSAT, small aperture satellite systems, data, and warehouse system by and large, spoke and hub and spoke model where you have one mega warehouse and then you have little spokes into those smaller markets. He revolutionized retailing the way it was done by Sears Roebuck or by Kmart. Would have never thought of going to small towns of 10,000 or less population, and the rest is history. Walmart is the largest retailer in America and in the world probably. And today it's not just Walmart, but even other companies like Dollar General, Family Dollar. These are convenience stores, which at one time were only in metro areas like the 7-Elevens. But today I can offer the same 1,500, 2,000 square foot unit, and I can have maybe no more than 300, 500,000 SKUs of different products, which are daily necessities, some discretionary, occasional use, etc. And if you go to Dollar General stores, you can figure out they are thriving. So if Walmart can do it, as I mentioned, you can do it also. I think this is where marketing can serve the society. Marketing for the good of the society rather than for the exploitation of markets. I'm very passionate about this one, and I think governments can enable marketers to do a more better job, provide some sort of a public-private partnership, and maybe put some infrastructure investments if necessary, build better roads, however they can do it. But here is another opportunity for public-private cooperation or within the industry cooperation, like the cooperatives do, like the agricultural cooperatives or the Amul dairy cooperatives. In India, Amul has done a fantastic job in making that unbranded, unsafe almost milk consumption into a branded, very safe, highly processed, very good milk consumption where people don't get sick by consuming milk. Water has done very well with bottled water, so it is very possible. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.